Hello and welcome to Your Property Empire. I'm Chris Gray. On tonight's show, what are the most popular suburbs from buying property at the moment? How is unaffordability affecting first home buyers and what can they do about it? And with Victoria bringing in new regulations on stamp duty in July, will that help buyers or make it harder? Well, joining me tonight to comment on our stories is Nathan Gallagher, New South Wales State Manager at realestate.com.au, and Charles Tarbey, Chairman and owner of Century 21 Australasia. Good to see you, Nathan. And last time we had you on, you were at News Corp, and now you're instead of selling papers onto the internet now.
Same position, different business, Chris, but enjoying it.
Yeah, wonderful. So we normally start off by saying or seeing what people are talking about on realestate.com, because obviously you get millions of viewers on there.
Yeah.
And I think we've got a graphic we'll pull up at the same time as well.
The suburbs, or it's the story that's got the most traction, Chris, is the suburbs that have been selling the fastest. So it's no, no surprise it's about hot property. But it's interesting, the top 10 suburbs have been dominated by the outskirts of Victoria. Suburbs like Tacoma, Mount Dandenong and Badger Creek are all operating with an average days of market around 10 days, which is incredible.
So, Charles, obviously there's so much data from REA. I guess, what does that tell you when there's huge volumes of people or kind of, I guess, days on the market are down?
Well, days on the market are going to change now because the market itself is changing, with the regulators changing the way finance is viewed or finance is gathered, and the way in which the industry, not just the industry, but a number of industries are talking the market down at the moment, which I find extraordinary because I like to talk the market down, but the market isn't down. So there might be some changes of not as many people going to auctions or not as many people bidding, but there's still a lot of fury out there. So I don't know if all of the stats we have right now are actually lining up.
And that's the thing, because a lot of the time it all comes into how you interpret the data, isn't it? Because you could have 10 auctions, 5 do really well and 5 bad, and then the media or whoever's talking can then pick whichever side they want.
One property sells for 70 million, as has happened, and that's going to change the median price. That property alone will change the median price of properties in Sydney.
Yeah.
And so, again, it's then, I guess, manipulating the data at the same time as well to try and work out the averages as well.
That's right.
Now, obviously, New South Wales is a pretty hot market as well. What are you finding there?
New South Wales is still very strong, but it's the outer suburbs, no different to Victoria, that are actually getting the traction. So in the north, Berowra has had an increase of 250% page views or visits to that suburb, and down south, Rockdale is about 170% up in terms of traffic numbers to Rockdale. So outside of the city, getting a lot of traction.
Now, Charles, there's still warning signs, because a lot of people say, oh, New South Wales and Victoria are flying along. We had some emails today from some people that have been to seminars and they were struggling. They'd had million-dollar properties in kind of 1,000 k's from Brisbane, mining towns, paid $1 million, and now it's worth 300.
And that's the case in a lot of those areas, particularly in Perth. We noticed that in Perth, a lot of negative equity in certain areas and people fighting to get buyers. And this is the concern all of the time when you hear about Sydney and Melbourne and you hear about the way in which those markets are trying to manipulate those markets without recognising the massive impact it can have on some of the markets that are really at rock bottom right now. And so when UBS called the top of the market after Easter and Anzac, well, the top of the market has come and gone in some parts of Australia already, but they're not talking about that. So it's very scary, Chris, and I personally would never have bought in an area where the rental return was the focus, and that's what you find in mining areas. I would never have done that, and I think we've advised people on many occasions.
One-horse towns is just too dangerous. Unless you're in the industry and you really know it and you're willing to take that punt.
There'll still be some people that have not only lost their equity in those properties, but they've probably lost their own homes.
Yeah, so certainly tough out there. Now, obviously, eyes are on the banks at the moment to see what they're up to, kind of independent of the RBA. How do you see it kind of changing the buyers as soon as you get those interest rate rises?
Chris, it happens almost instantaneously. I call a lot of auctions on Saturday, and there's a direct correlation between a media putting out a piece of information about interest rates going up and the hesitation with buyers on a Saturday. So it does happen quite quickly, but the buyers also forget quite quickly as well. But there is an interesting transition. It does take effect almost immediately through a bit of negative press.
We never used to get our news so quickly, and I think that's what it is. And this is why you can't really gauge a marketplace now, because it's changing rapidly. And I think that if you get a little bit more negative press and it's consistent, and I think you're probably going to see that over the next few weeks, you're going to see a lot of people saying, look, we haven't reached the top of the market. as others have called it, but we're getting close. And I had a caller in on the radio show this evening, and this lady was concerned that her mother's home in Seven Hills, who's going to a nursing home, should we sell it now because we keep hearing the market is going to collapse? And Seven Hills is a brilliant area still on the rise. So it's interesting how the information is starting to filter out, and some people are getting a bit nervous.
And it's probably a good segue into kind of social media now, because before the big media channels, I guess, had the control, whereas now the consumers got the control. So are people actually listening to social media? So say they watch it on the news or the radio, and they might think, oh, well, that's kind of good, that's proper news.
Yeah.
If they get all that feeling on social media, do they believe all that as well?
Chris, social media is becoming such a powerful platform because buyers actually trust peer recommendation, and there's no better platform than Facebook. People want likes, people want advocacy for what they're doing, and I think the real estate industry is no different. Agents want other people to advocate for them because they become more appealing to the consumer.
Now, Charles, I think for us for the people that are in the industry, and obviously you're as well, that's the biggest warning sign is your friends and your family. They're probably the worst ones to listen to, aren't they?
Yes. And
apart from your kids that have got you as a father.
Don't have any... Oh, friends. What did you say, family or friends? I have said this before on many occasions with you, Chris. When perception meets reality, reality comes off second best. And social media is an area that I distrust very much, because a lot of the rave reviews that agents have out there are some sites that set up a system where negative reviews never reach the marketplace. It's only ever positive reviews.
So you mean all the reviews you post, they don't go on the other agents' profiles?
I try my hardest. I try my hardest. And I just can't. That's my biggest complaint. I've complained to the ACCC about this particular company. But it's true, though. You know, you see a lot of people pumping themselves up, and real estate's not just about promotion. There's a really big job behind listing and selling real estate, a really big job. And these private companies that are coming in are going to put buyers and sellers together. That's great, and that can happen, and that can work. But it's incredibly dangerous when you don't have somebody mediating a transaction. And it's my greatest concern that people believe what they see on Facebook, and the bells and whistles of what they buy. And it's so easy. I've never seen, and I'm sure you've never seen, a resume that somebody's handed you for a job with anything bad in it.
Yeah, and a reference that says, yeah, shocking, don't hire him. Yeah. But, I mean, that's the reality, because for a lot of these sites is who's actually paying the site. If it's the agent paying the site, then have they got any vested interest to actually do the wrong thing by the agent?
Yeah, it's just not at arm's length. But
yeah.
Anyway, look, the greatest thing a real estate agent could do, in my view, if they do use social media, and again, this is something we've talked about, if they want to do something really, really different and stand out, when you get a response on social media and you've got the opportunity to call the person or go and visit them, that's going to make you stand out from the agents that just message back and then hope the hell something happens.
Yeah, so just a tool. Any tips from you guys, either from the News Corp side or the realestate.com?
I think similar to what Charles was saying, people don't want to be spoken at, they don't want to be promoted to, they want to be part of a conversation. So if you're going to use social, make it part of a conversation and plug in the story behind the sale, not just the sale. And that way people actually can be part of it rather than just be promoted to.
Sure, sounds good. Well, Charles, let's jump on to your numbers and see what the auction clearance rates are.
Yeah, and
a lot of people are saying it's like we've only got half months these days because we keep getting all these wonderful long weekends.
And we have, and again, that's why I was so surprised when the top of the market was called by this organisation, because the clearance rates over two of the long weekends were low. Well, funny that, you know, and I certainly didn't agree with it. 81% was Sydney's and 82 was Melbourne's. Canberra was 67.9. It's only slightly up from last week. But the overall clearance rate across the nation was 76.9%. And this time last year it was 71.3. So it's still better. It's still better than this time last year, with most of the capital cities performing very, very well. So I'm really not sure what the hoo-ha is about. One of the chaps we spoke to today had 4 auctions on the weekend, and every one of them sold between 200 and 305,000 above the reserve.
And even though the clearance rates are still reasonably high, do you monitor kind of days on the market as well? Because obviously, even if things are selling before it goes into the auction clearance rates and on the day, And as we've always talked about, it's quite often even a few days afterwards.
Yeah, a lot happens after, and we've done that all the way along. Sometimes it's before. It depends on the market. Used to be a whole lot sell before and a whole lot sell after. So, but so long as they sell, and I think the process of the auction is what it's all about, and that process works. It gives people 3 opportunities to sell before the auction, on the day or after, but they still get a transaction from strong marketing. So again, and that takes a real estate agent, a good qualified agent, to get that process through. Not just a website or an application that brings 2 people together, one that may be much more experienced than the other and can take advantage of the situation.
Sure. Now, obviously, the other main number always after is the homes advertised for sale.
I have been disappointing you week after week, and I'm going to disappoint you again.
Never mind.
Negative 0.68% of new homes coming on the market over this time last week. Still, again, nothing major. It's not crashing, which is okay. And I think you'll find that the apartment scene will start to help pick up the number of properties that come on the market.
Wonderful. And we'll go to rent price movements.
Yes, slight adjustment, up 0.7% this week. The best performer in all of the rental movements, apart from the fact that Sydney always plods along very, very nicely. Hobart continues to demonstrate some great growth, but the figures that we've been keeping for all of these years, I went back to this time in January 2015 to have a look and see how far we've come. 3.37% increase since January 2015 on an average across the country. So it's not a really big movement when you think about it. And I think that will probably stay steady as more and more investment properties come on the market from the flush of investors we've had and those that are about to settle apartments that are coming through.
Yeah. And Nathan, do you see kind of generally much about consumer sentiment at all? I mean, generally you're out there speaking to the agents all the time and they're speaking to all the consumers. Generally, most people are kind of happy out there?
I think most people, Chris, look, it's been a 4-year cycle or a growth market that's been unprecedented, certainly here in Sydney, and I think people are still very positive. I think that, Charles touched on it, the market's not going to crash, the market's not going to implode. I think we're definitely seeing buyers starting to pull back, with banks starting to change interest rates and certainly the forward view of it. And I think that sellers, which I think, seeing or hearing that it might have peaked, is going to create a little bit more supply. I think people will start to jump on it, try to capitalise on that, which is not a bad thing.
Sell, sell, sell. If those people are looking to downsize, get your house on the market. If you're in Sydney, Melbourne, get your house on the market.
So that's the thing is you need the domino effect, don't you?
Yes.
For the market to be cooled a bit, to people to realise that if they sell, there's a good chance that you can actually still buy. So it wasn't as dramatic as it was before.
No.
Right, thanks for those numbers and thanks for joining us, Charles.
Chris.
We're going to jump to a short break. We'll be back soon.
A rental property can be a rewarding investment, but even with great tenants, there'll always be life's unavoidable accidents and uncertainties. Standard building insurance may not cover damage caused by tenants or loss of rent, leaving you out of pocket. Terry Shear is Australia's leading landlord insurance specialist, with award-winning landlord insurance from $1 a day to protect your property and rental income. Call Terry Shear today or go online.
Kia Sorento is tuned for Australian conditions. It's been tested on the harshest of roads, from inner city to outback, so that ride and handling is second to none. Kia Sorento, it's made for Australia.
Come on!
Good afternoon.
Good morning.
How's your day?
Good. I'm just walking along the beach.
Right, shall
Breaks down a long dark street and a silent
How was your day?
wail
Hey, do you mind if I call you back?
in the
I'll
night.
talk to you then.
If you knew
Okay, I'll talk to you tomorrow.
how much this moment means to me, and how long I've waited for your touch. It feels like home to me.
why with Cbus. Because if I need advice, whether it's a simple question over the phone or about a retirement plan, I'll always be talking to someone who's working in my best interests.
Cbus, for all of us.
There's tough. And then there's a new breed of tough. The new Amarok, now standard with App Connect and rear view camera. From only $42,990 drive away, now with free 8-speed auto.
Barnaby Joyce takes on Westpac for giving in to the Greens at the cost of Queensland jobs. Plus, the ABC finds a whole new way to report on terrorism without once mentioning the M-word. On the Vault Report, only Sky News Live.
Welcome back to Your Property Empire. Well, joining me on the show tonight is Nathan Gallagher, New South Wales State Manager at realestate.com.au. Well, many areas in Sydney and Melbourne are now unaffordable. So how is this affecting first home buyers? It's always been tough for them, but it's got to be even tougher now.
Chris, it's not getting any easier for first home buyers, no doubt. I think that getting into the market these days without equity, with parents' assistance, is extremely hard. And we're seeing down in Victoria they're looking at legislation changes around first home buyers and getting stamp duty below a certain threshold to encourage that. And look, good news for first home buyers, but is that going to have a knock-on effect to prices through other brackets through the market? History would suggest that that's what happens, so it'd be interesting to see how it all plays out.
Because we had it in New South Wales, I think, a couple of years ago that they were doing that, and it was, I think, on under a certain value and then on brand new properties.
Yeah.
And again, it just effectively pushed the price up.
We've seen two cycles at the back end after the Olympics, then we saw it off the GFC where they put through these first home buyer concessions, and in both those cycles it drove the domino effect into other price brackets. So it's concerning when you look at the growth that's gone through on the east coast and also down in Victoria. Putting in another incentive for first home buyers, you would have to suggest it's going to have a knock-on effect to other price brackets as well. So I don't know what the answer is, but look, good news for first home buyers, but potentially challenging for other sectors of the market.
Because I guess if you're around the major capital cities and you're spending $500,000 on a property, you're generally going to get away with maybe 5% worst case on deposit, which is 25 grand.
Yeah.
The stamp duty was another, say, 25 or so. But even if you get rid of that, it's still 25 or 30 grand you've got to save. Whereas if you haven't got the parents with the equity, that's a lot of money to save. I don't think I've ever saved 25 or 30 grand.
And Chris, the compounding effect is most people that are trying to save that money are actually paying rent at the same time. So that the speed in which they're trying to save is going to be very challenging to try and get that money together.
But I guess on the positive side then, even though the banks are doing it, kind of making it pretty tough for everyone, they are more open to brothers and sisters and parent guarantees and all that kind of thing compared to maybe 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah, I think the landscape's definitely changing, and that kind of support and the banks viewing that support is definitely changing. And it has to change, because how else do you actually get the money to actually get on the journey in property?
And I guess the other thing is the education. Because I remember when I started, which is like 23 years ago, there was no books. Not that I read a book anyway. I had magazines and all the newspapers and all that kind of stuff. But I mean now, the volume of information, so on realestate.com or all these other sites, is just ridiculous, no matter what you want to search on.
It can be a double-edged sword, though. I had my cousin who's down in Victoria, and he rang me because he goes, oh, he knew that I was in real estate, and he said, oh, what should I do? Where do I go? What should I read? And he went through about 5 or 6 different sources that he thinks he should investigate or check or read or study, and it can be information overload. The bottom line is people have got to manage their money, be able to save and manage a lifestyle where they actually don't spend as much as what they come through the front door. That's just the start. But too much information can sometimes just create confusion for people.
So you think before they've got 2 choices, they get lots more information than they've got 5. They're even more confused, they don't know what to do.
That's right.
Yeah, it's still out there.
Yeah.
Any other trends with that demographic of first home buyer?
Yeah, I spoke during the week to a gentleman who started a business called Flatmates, or a business at realestate.com.au bought, which is recently, called Flatmates, and he was talking through about the demographics where on Flatmates they would look for share accommodation. They'd find like-minded people, they'd come together and they'd share accommodation. There's now part of that where they're actually looking for like-minded people to buy property together. So it's interesting how affordability has driven this sort of change in demographic, whereas now people can't afford to do it on their own. They may not have friends to do it with, so they're searching like-minded people to go into property with. So I guess word of warning, make sure the contract's tight and whatever arrangement is very documented, because people's lives change and people sometimes, to get out of a property transaction, can create more tears than actually the upside.
Oh, there's so many costs and stamp duties and capital gains and the rest of it. And look, I remember when we started the show about 7 or 8 years ago, we had Rismark International on, which was I think part of similar to Residex. And what they were doing was, I think, lending people a 20% deposit, but then they might take half of the capital gain or something like that, which obviously if you got the deposit you'd never do, because you'd never give away half your capital gain. But if it means that you get in the market, at least it's something. And I believe there's other companies that are looking to do a similar kind of thing, because it's easier to get these apps and to communicate and put people together these days.
Yeah, I think these days there's so much technology that enables the decision-making process to take place, and as long as it's documented and everyone knows what the game is, then hopefully it can help. Yeah,
so I always say you'd always rather control it 100%, but it's better to have half a home than no home at all.
That's right.
Because at least it'll get you on the step ladder for the next one.
Yeah.
Now, are there any particular suburbs that are around that are actually reasonably affordable? And maybe what is reasonably affordable these days?
Reasonably affordable is an interesting word when it comes to Sydney, but I think the best value, Chris, if you sort of go north and south, it's Wollongong down south, it's Newcastle up north, which is still in striking distance of Sydney. You can still commute to the CBD by train or car, but the value for money in terms of what you get comparative to Sydney is fantastic. So it is outside, but you can still get to the city, but good value.
And again, you've just got to look at alternatives. And I guess the big thing now is with this rent vesting thing is you don't necessarily have to live in it, do you?
No, and a lot of people are choosing to do that. You know, they live where they would like to live and they invest somewhere where it's a little bit more affordable for them to do that, and that's just becoming a byproduct of a market that's extremely expensive.
So any other tips for people that are looking to get into the market?
I think, Chris, the main tip is buy within your means. A lot of people stand around at the barbecue and they get swept up in what they would like to live in, but the reality is they can't afford it. And on interest rates at record lows, they may be able to afford it today with 2 incomes, but when that goes to 1 income and a child comes along, then that's a real problem. So buying within your means is incredibly important.
And it's trying to have that balance, isn't it? Because I guess one of the best things I did as a kid was I guess over-borrowed. And it's one of those things that forced saving can be one of the best things. Because when you're young and there's all these things to do and there's phones and all the rest of it, the last thing you're going to do and save is save. If there's money in the bank account, it's going to go. So if it comes out the day after your wages, it's something. But as you say, you go over and overextend, and it goes the other way and you're completely screwed.
And Chris, you can trial that before you actually dive in the deep end. You can actually run a business plan or a home budget on the condition that you'd be paying back a mortgage of X before you actually take that on. And that's an interesting 3-month cycle before you jump into the deep end, that if you can't do that, then be careful, because you could get caught out.
So it's kind of paper trading with shares, but again, the reality is most people, they just want to jump in and go do it. So anyway, some good ideas there. Well, Tom Panos is away this month, and so I'm going to take you through this week's Property of the Week. Now, this week we've got a 4-bed, 2-bath family home with parking for 2 cars, and it's at 49 Station Street in Newtown in New South Wales. It's got a price guide of $2 to $3 million and has got a rental guide of $9 to $9.50 a week. Now, the property is set across 3 levels and sits on a huge block for the area at 335 square metres. It's incredibly private but close to everything, with King Street and Enmore Road just a short walk away. Now, it features well-preserved interiors featuring lots of original details. Now, this property goes to auction on Saturday, the 6th of May. So certainly still plenty of good properties out there, isn't there?
Chris, there's beautiful homes out there, and there's a lot of sellers trying to capitalise on a market that has been through an incredible cycle. So I think hopefully we'll see more of that. But, yeah, in Sydney there is lots of property to choose from.
But it's amazing. I mean, the good thing about seeing a lot of these properties is you see the quality of good campaigns when they're actually put there with good agents.
Yeah.
And you look at the photography, you look at the way it's been designed, but there's still some shocking examples on the internet of people that are trying to scrimp and save a bit of money by taking their property to auction, and they just don't do it right.
I think, Chris, if it's the family home or even if it's the investment, but the family home, it's a tax-free transaction. If there's any investment you're going to make in life, it's going to be in one where the tax man's not going to grab it. And I think that if you're trying to protect an asset, $2-3 million, in some cases, you know, $500,000 or $600,000, investing in marketing is the best investment you're going to make, which again, you know, it's an investment in the profits of the actual transaction.
And again, no matter what's happening in the market, we're always getting these stories of X amount of properties that are selling well over reserve, and it's hundreds and hundreds of thousands.
Yeah. Like I said, I call lots of auctions, Chris, and there's nothing better than seeing a vendor on auction day when it's gone 200 over. It's just like they've won lotto. You know, there's tears and they're crying, and to earn that kind of money in a day-to-day job, in some cases, can take years. So it can change people's lives, and the investment in marketing is an absolute ingredient to doing that.
So you've got to spend money to make money.
That's right.
Good to see you on the show again.
Chris.
And thanks for joining us at home as well. We'll be back next week. Until then, I'm Chris Gray. Good night.
The information featured in this program is general in nature and therefore should not be relied upon. Guests appearing on the program may have commercial arrangements with some of the companies mentioned. Before making any investment, insurance or financial planning decisions, you should consult a licensed professional who can advise whether your decision is appropriate for you.